as well. I will switch to sharing the presentation now. Just one moment. Can I confirm everyone can see the presentation? I get a thumbs up. Excellent, fantastic. So thank you for the introduction, Kate. Really appreciate Women in Media and the opportunity to have this conversation with you all this evening. Ad tech is, one of the fastest growing areas within marketing and advertising, and something that I'm really, really passionate about. I entered into the space just over 10 years ago at a time where the concept of using data and technology to make decisions on where or how to buy media was a completely foreign idea. And so to take, it's worth taking a few minutes to explain exactly what I do on top of what Kate already mentioned. So I lead the sales team at the trade desk across Australia and New Zealand. I manage a very ambitious team of forward-thinking salespeople who constantly keep me on my toes. In addition to that, I also run the API or application programming interface area of the business within APAC, which simply is a technology that allows businesses to share and connect data with one another. As you can imagine, this is a very niche area of ad tech, and there is a massive underrepresentation of females in this area. Here's a little bit of a story before I begin the presentation. When I started at the trade desk 3 years ago, I did a roadshow across the Eastern Seaboard in 3 different states with the hope to work with key decision makers across agencies and brands to understand, I guess, the go-to-market strategy of this new niche area that we were launching within the business. Of 164 people that I met, only 4 of those were females. And so as you can imagine, these numbers were absolutely shocking. I make a very conscious effort to try and change the perception that roles in STEM are intimidating, boring, or male-dominated, and that it's confined to academics and it doesn't require any sort of creativity. Because in actual fact, STEM roles often require a higher sense of creativity because the hypothesis isn't always known on how to solve a problem, and therefore it does require sort of art and not science. On a wide, I think that was me. On a wider scale, I also think that if we don't start to increase the skill deficit, then we are at risk of falling behind on the global stage in terms of innovation. And so today, for the next sort of 20-30 minutes, I'm going to take you through some trends post-COVID, learning from the past and how brands and agencies or journalists or communications people can adjust to some of the data and technology that's come out as a result of what's happened the sort of the last few months. We'll talk about the role that data plays in this and how humans and machines can sort of work together to ensure that we are given the best outcomes possible. Excellent. So uncertainty has been the dominant feature of 2020. I think we can all agree to that. COVID-19 has delivered the biggest jolt to consumer behaviour in living memory. And media usage really is changing in real time. Where we go for news, inspiration and direction and distraction has shifted rapidly. And whilst it's too early to make a call on the long-term impact for brands and media, it is highly likely that data will become the common currency, and that the shift and the acceleration that we have seen over the last few months, it is unlikely that it will reverse in a post-COVID world. So it does seem like only a few months ago that we were recovering from the devastating bushfire season and looking forward to the year ahead. Fast forward, and the uncertainty of the last 6 months certainly has not disappeared. And for our friends and colleagues down in Melbourne, this is obviously a very, very challenging time. But like any time of great upheaval, there will be significant and lasting change. And it is clear that the media industry has fundamentally changed. And as you can see here, looking at this very short timeline during the early stages, we've all had to adapt very, very quickly to these changes. Understandably, during this period, Australian sentiments have demonstrated the impact of this. 56% very or extremely concerned about the situation, 72% concerned on a global scale, and 60% expect the outbreak will last 6 months more in Australia. And the shift in consumer segment driven by uncertainty around the pandemic has seen some definite changes in our behaviours as well. And I'm sure that many of us can relate to this. You know, working in the office, we're now working from home. We've seen, you know, the re-emergence of online education, winding down at home, moving from gyms to indoor workouts. And you can see that some of these consumer behaviours will start to emerge new sort of products and businesses. And being in the advertising space and working with, you know, 15 of the top 20 advertisers in Australia, it's been really interesting to see how brands have adapted to this new shift. Let me just go to the next slide. Oh, excellent. Sorry there. One of the biggest or more noticeable shifts has been the shift to sort of in-home media consumption. And again, that's no surprise during lockdown, some of the trends that we've seen, which I will go through as well. But in terms of usage and how we're using media, the percentage of time spent on laptops and smartphones, smart TVs has all increased. You know, time spent at home and what we're doing at home during that time, there's been a lot more coverage of news, streaming services, time spent on apps. We will talk about podcasts a little bit further down the track, but also, you know, the growth in podcasts, particularly around wellness content as well. And then also, you know, the percentage of increase around live streaming and following events across that. If we look more granularly at the types of content that Australians are looking at, searching for coronavirus has been right up there, listening to music, funny videos, and then podcasts have also had an 18% increase. We at the Trade Desk are in a fairly unique position in that we are exposed to large amounts of data, given that we sort of work with a number of different partners and different channels. So we're an agnostic open platform that works with the broadcasting broadcasters in Australia. We work with a number of digital platforms, as well as working with brands and advertisers on the buy side as well. And so we've got access to a number of sort of rich data sources, and I'm just going to spend the next few slides taking you through some of the real noticeable insights. So between January to June, if you look at month-to-month comparison, 856 million more daily video ad opportunities in comparisons of the months. So that clearly shows the influx of people who are shifting to digital platforms to consume media. Across connected TV devices, we saw a 467% increase, 123% on mobile, 49% on laptop, and over 200% on native video. And just for reference, native video is sort of in video feeds, an advertisement that will be placed in articles, as opposed to sort of, you know, a video that you might see, you know, prior to watching a video content. Looking at the next slide too, you can see throughout the different stages of, you know, pre-COVID initial breakout, full lockdown, and then the ending of easing restrictions. Obviously there's national statistics not broken down by state here as well. You can see growth across the board, but just a few really noticeable channels. Broadcast video. So this is sort of looking at to mid-July statistics, so slightly different from the slide earlier. 88% growth in BVOD. And it's kind of interesting if you look at the trends and match that with lockdown. You know, over the last couple of weeks, we started to see a little bit of easing of restrictions, and the number of, you know, available video streams did sort of decrease. And the other noticeable increase, of course, has come from audio. So one of our largest audio partners is Spotify. And, you know, we work very closely with the Spotify team, and some of the insights that we've seen across the last few months include, you know, looking at the types of content that people are watching. In a survey that was conducted on a global scale, 78% of mothers have used music to connect with their kids. There was a huge boost in storytelling content. And this was quite a fun stat. 40% have started dance parties on their own or with family members. And of course, we've seen a huge increase in wellness content. The second most notable trend across audio and podcasting is that podcasts are a companion to hit binge-worthy TV shows. So say, for example, Tiger King or The Last Dance, or documentaries or miniseries that are on Netflix or streaming services that have had, you know, a huge surge in media consumption and people watching these shows. That same audience are then going to podcasts as almost a companion to learn more. So I thought that was a very interesting stat. And then similarly, increasing in the podcast production, particularly those podcasts that have really loyal followers. So a huge increase in the number of episodes across multiple categories. And the most significant growth in the last few months has come from true crime, fiction, and content as well. And so, we've got a ton of data that we're sitting on, and it's interesting to see how technology plays a role in that. What's interesting is, we're not just in a pandemic, we're also in what we're calling an infodemic. And a difference between economic downturns in the past and the challenges that we're facing today is the presence and perseverance of social media. And I think this holds especially true to our region, where social platforms and user-generated content, or UGC content, are a huge part of how people are consuming media. And I think that the persistent large-scale fear-mongering that exists within these environments pose an incredibly dangerous threat to consumers' perception of brands who advertise within them. I can say from our personal experience, the first few weeks when this was coming to light, there were a lot of brands and advertisers that were unsure of how to react. Do we pause all our activity? Do we filter what we're doing? Do we need to, pay more attention to the types of content that we're across? But in the last sort of few weeks, I think there's been a huge focus on, aligning brands in areas where we know that the content is brand safe, and general content that is not generated by fake news. And here's some of the headlines that you all would have seen as well. And in doing research for this presentation, I found some really fascinating myths around coronavirus. I think the World Health Organization actually had to address and debunk a few of these myths on their website. Some of them, to quote, "Will taking a bath prevent me from getting coronavirus? Hand dry is effective in killing the new coronavirus." There was a few articles around how bleach can cure coronavirus. And then also, can garlic or sesame oil help to kill the coronavirus? So you can see that there's a number of reasons why brands and advertisers will be cautious around advertising during infodemic, and the idea that we need to be ensuring that we're recommending areas and platforms and media outlets that are obviously doing their due diligence and scanning this as well. 66% of consumers say their respect for a brand decreases when they encounter ads near inappropriate or distressing content. Sorry, excuse me. And this is a good segue into just giving you some top line insight into the role that technology plays. And so this information is from our partners at Oracle, and I believe we have a couple on the line here today. There is a lot of technology that's available that can look at blocking specific keywords within articles that brands might not want to be associated with. And early on in the day, when this was coming to light, we did start to see a huge impact on the news sector and brands wanting to remove their advertising entirely from this space. This is a good example that shows the importance of page level or content recognition, and not just having such a strict approach to blacklisting entire words. So this is some analysis that was done on COVID-19. So for example, a brand might not want to be associated with an article around COVID-19 and the death rate. However, a brand that might want to be associated with COVID-19 and working from home tips. So, looking at technology that's available now, where you don't have to just look at blocking, the domain URL based on what the heading of an article is, that you can actually start to scan the content on the page and use that to determine what's safe and what's deemed unsafe based on your guidelines. So in this particular example, based on this, 70% was deemed unsafe, 30% was deemed safe. Using this new page level technology where you can actually look at content, there was 18% that was safe in that section as well. Oops, sorry, I think we're having some here. So, we know that consumer behaviours and media consumptions have changed. Whether you work in marketing or advertising, comms or journalism, the last few months will forever be impacting the way that many of us work in the future. And so how can we apply all of this new data that is available to make sure that we're adjusting our approach to business with all of these changes in mind? From a marketing perspective, in a recent survey that was conducted by Blue Media, over 60% of companies indicated that their overall budget adjustment could include a reduction of up to 30%. And as brands tighten media budgets, media buyers need to rein more control over their marketing dollars. And this is where data is truly going to become more powerful. And so, you know, we do see in the future that data-driven marketing will allow buyers to maximize every dollar that's spent. And there's a lot more pressure on marketers to really measure and show that every dollar that they're attributing to marketing during this period is having a positive return on investment. And digital does address some of these unique opportunities. So amidst the challenge, there are some opportunities. Firstly, addressability and decisioning. So, you know, through digital, instead of doing a whole spray and pray approach, brands get to decide who they want to reach at an individual level, across what channels and what devices and when. Looking at adaptability, the ability to react quickly to market conditions. I know there's one example of, you know, Royal Caribbean that had some advertising up on print boards, and they weren't quickly able to adapt and remove that advertising, whereas in a digital sort of platform, you can switch things on fairly easy and it is very agile to move around. In terms of optimization and actionable insights, you know, using platforms and data, you can receive real-time reporting insights, allowing you to determine what is and isn't working well, and therefore making every dollar work harder. And then finally, measurability. So understanding how successful the campaign is in meeting business objectives. In terms of what we've seen brands and how they've reacted to this, brands should be adapting their marketing mix to take advantage of recent increases in media consumption at home. It's interesting, there are some brands who have actually used this as an opportunity to gain a higher share of voice in specific areas as well. And so some early recommendations were along the lines of, you know, minimizing out of home during lockdown periods, cinemas when lockdown was occurring and they weren't open. Obviously with the cancellation of, you know, many marquee sporting events for the year, minimizing event sponsorships. We saw a lot of brands maximize digital, again, for those reasons I listed above, that through data, it allows you to have, you know, really tight optimization and ensuring every dollar is measurable and you're attributing your dollar value to an actual business outcome. And we have seen brands and agencies look to maintain sort of social media and short form video platforms as well. In terms of how we see technology and humans working together, we believe that they go hand in hand. You really cannot do one without the other. A few examples here, you know, machines are great at identifying patterns, whereas humans are great at analysing that and looking at future behaviours. Machines are good at surfacing insights. Humans are great of interpreting those insights. Machines can, you know, look at speed and scale and automation, which allow humans to have time back to work on more revenue driving tasks. So again, whilst we have all these amazing sets of data and insights available, how can we use that to combine that with our existing skill sets that we have to ensure that we're continuously progressing throughout this time period? Finally, just finishing on a quote from Chris Stevenson, who's the Regional Head of Strategy and Planning at APAC. Be consumer first and keep a sense of optimism, because the recovery will come around and brands need to be ready to thrive. And that has been sort of the sentiment that we've been working towards on the ground over the last few months, and encouraging brands and advertisers to get to know their new consumers, because as I mentioned at the start, you know, consumer behaviours have shifted so much in the last few months, and that acceleration is going to be long lasting and will not be going backwards. Finally, just before we move to questions as well, I will send this link around to Kate or Kath to share with those on the call, but the Trade Desk has launched an education program online, which we've been working very hard at. We've just had our 10,000th completion globally, which is fantastic. And it's a repository of, you know, hours of new training material, professionally produced content. There are bits of information from, you know, 101 on marketing principles all the way to how to utilize a programmatic platform, and we are offering that free of charge in market for any of those who would like to sort of further their education within this space. And it does come with, you know, LinkedIn certification badges and whatnot as well. Excellent, thank you.
Very good, Steph, and to time. But am I allowed to ask the first question? Because if 40% of people have been starting dance parties in their own home, I guess everyone's just wanting to know if you were one of them.
Absolutely. No? Depends what day and what time, to be honest.
Quite right. So we had a few questions ahead of time that I'll go through, and then a couple that have popped up. But if anybody has questions, either pop them into the messenger here, or just let me know that you'd like to ask Steph directly, and I will reach out to you. So the first one we had, which was, given the rise of BVOD streaming and continued growth but fragmented